Hello, and welcome to the Mohit Show. In this video I will be covering stories from r/detrans, a well-moderated subreddit for people questioning, desisting, or detransitioning. I will be protecting the identities of these posters since individuals in this community have been harassed when their stories have been discussed. A text-to-speech voice is being used due to current recording difficulties. Don't worry, I will be able to voice again soon. This video's first post, titled, "I Just Want to Die. Detrans male I destroyed my life with puberty blockers." With the spotlight on this issue now, all sorts of studies are coming out showing just how dangerous they are. They cause brain swelling and vision loss amongst other things. It all makes sense now why I'm dealing with a myriad of health issues. Doctors are helpless and either don't know what to do with me or tell me it's all in my head. I'm basically a science experiment at this point. I'm only 24. I can't imagine suffering another 50 or so years like this. I just wish all this information coming out existed back in 2014 when I made the horrible decision of going on them. It could have saved my life. From the comments. Desisted. The information did exist, and every activist and medical professional has been playing an active role in suppressing that information. Now that the backlash is forming in the wings, suddenly all this info about the side effects of puberty blockers and hormone therapy are suddenly grand revelations again. I really can't express how angry it gets me having watched this all unfold. Wishing you the best up. Original poster. I guess what I meant to say was I wish this issue was more prevalent 8 years ago. It would have prompted me to actually do research instead of just taking my doctor's word for it being safe and reversible. Medically detrans female Lupron has had a bad reputation even among doctors since the early 2000s at least. Big Pharma willingly ignored the disastrous and known side effects of that drug, and instead of pulling it off the market, they simply rebranded it as a puberty blocker and raked in the dough. It's the definition of evil. I'm so sorry you were misled into taking this drug. Keep speaking up and sharing your story, tell everyone you know, and make sure your parents understand fully how this drug has negatively affected you. Your parents will likely talk amongst others, and hopefully spread awareness. Your experience is your strength, your truth is your power. Detrans female. As much as I believe in personal responsibility for our choices, the truth is that the average person's choices are dramatically influenced by others. Especially at a young age like 16. While I believe it is our personal responsibility to move forward to right things, this is in part because those who encouraged us down this path often have more power than we do, and efforts to hold those responsible can end up hurting ourselves with little benefit. I believe we need to take personal responsibility for choosing our path moving forward so that enough of us can get well enough to form a large enough mass to speak out to the general public and be seen as sane and credible enough to listen to. I'm so sorry whatever happened and influenced you down this experimental path. You were a guinea pig, as were the thousands of others who have been fast-tracked to hormones and surgeries. Sure, we chose to do this to ourselves. But usually while under great duress, and no rational person would see that as a healthy, well-informed choice. If a teenager was psychologically struggling and said they feel inside that they're actually a combat veteran, not a high school student, we wouldn't pump them with hormones to make them battle-ready and give them an AR-15. In any sane health system, adults wouldn't be agreeing with your mental illness around gender and giving you strong hormones to stop puberty, a developmental period of prime importance in the human lifespan. Just because the professionals have a PhD doesn't make them right. It just gives them a piece of paper that lets them be perceived as an authority figure. /Andrand, what's your primary issue right now? Are you able to participate in school or work? Original poster. I definitely learned the hard way not to place so much trust in medical professionals because of their education/experience. I've come to realize at the end of the day, it's no different from a business. Once they have your money, they could care less about you. Right now, I'm working a crappy minimum wage job, still living with my parents. I don't have the attention span or intelligence for college. No social life. My health is declining with no support in sight. I feel like S every day. So yeah, I'd say the chances of ever living a normal life are fairly null. Socially trans. Regrets medical transition. Lots of ways to improve your health even if your foundation is compromised. If you're unemployed and live at home, you have time to try to figure it out. I'm really sorry this happened to you. My transition coincided with developing a lot of health issues too, which have taken me years to resolve. Detrans male, what hormones did you go on and what type of symptoms are you having, if you don't mind sharing? I took estradiol for 18 days and spironolactone for 3 or 4 of them. I feel like my anxiety has gotten substantially worse, my vision especially at night is worse, I feel a lot weaker, and generally just wrong. So wrong. I made a big mistake too. I thought that this was the only way I could keep myself from a life of regret and depression. I thought that if I didn't transition, I would spend the rest of my life regretting it and eventually kill myself. I was just so scared of losing my feminine appearance and let my OCD and anxiety get to me. I just hate that these doctors allowed me to do this to myself in a 2-hour appointment. I will never be the same person again. I didn't even get the femininity I traded my health for. Honestly, and I mean honestly, I have always looked really feminine anyway. I should have just been grateful I even get to be somewhat okay with my appearance. Instead, I risked throwing my health away and now I don't know if I will ever fully heal. And this was only 18 days. 18 effing days. Why did I do this to myself? What's wrong with me? I am so sorry you are going through this too, I really am. Original poster: I was on the same medications, and something called Detran, which is the puberty blocker that is literal poison. All for nearly 2 years. My symptoms are fatigue, headaches, brain fog/memory loss, dysautonomia, hearing, and vision loss too. I'm glad it only took you 18 days to come to your senses. I don't think that's really long enough to cause any sort of long-term harm. My anxiety has worsened as well. Coming to the subreddit nearly gives me a panic attack as it reminds me of how bad I messed up. Detrans male: yeah, I've done a lot of research on Detran and the only reason it is expected to be worth $1.04 billion by 2026. Eventually the sheer number of us will mean that the activists and medical community will no longer be able to silence us all. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I always think about what would have happened if I didn't hide my confusion towards gender for so long. If I was pushed to transition so easily at 18, I can only imagine how easily I would have at 13 if that was what I was surrounded by, and sadly that's becoming the case for more and more of us. Original poster: it's funny, I remember looking it up on r/transgender and everyone was ranting and raving about how it's the gold standard. Yeah, the gold standard at destroying your body as fast as possible. That place is a complete circle jerk. Reddit was unfortunately a big influence in my decision. Detrans male me too, as well as 4chan. Over time I have realized that the only way these people can justify doing this to themselves is by denial and refusing to even consider any information opposing their viewpoint that puberty blockers are the best thing ever. If they admit they are bad, that means that they have effed up a lot of lives, maybe even their own, so they just double down and deny and the cycle continues. It's just evil that medical professionals are overseeing this all. I am so sorry this happened to you. Every time I see one of those anime trans memes about HRT and how great it is, I get so mad, cause that's the exact type of S that made me transition, especially the femboy and egg culture. Can I ask if you talked to your doctor about the side effects? This isn't normal. Original poster: yup. Blood tests were normal. Brain MRI was normal. They don't know what to do with me. Desisted male: don't let the assholes that put your trough this win. The more you are out there and are open about your issues, the higher the chance that you can save someone else. Detrans male: I'm basically useless. I can't take any legal action. I'm not in any position of power. Many states seem to be finally banning this inhumane practice, thankfully. Desisted female: I really want to get the message across loud and clear, this is not on you. While I hate people who refuse to be accountable, you were a child when this was done to you, you were prescribed drugs on an experimental basis by medical professionals who should never have done so. You have nothing to blame yourself for. Plenty of people feel certain ways that are not real. An anorexic person who is severely underweight thinks they are fat, but you don't see doctors helping them to lose more weight. You were a confused child, and you should have been offered appropriate help and support for your mental health, not given experimental drugs off-label which were never designed for healthy young people to take. They are primarily for men with prostate cancer to extend their lives. Men who would never have had to live long-term with any adverse effects. We've known for years of how they have crippled women who were prescribed this for endometriosis, and lawsuits have followed. None of this is your fault, do not blame yourself. Questioned a while but didn't end up transitioning, you are not alone. There are people in the shadows struggling with the same thing, but they are terrified of speaking out. They are terrified because they only meet the scrutiny of the internet trans ideology. They haven't found this community yet. But you aren't alone, and there are most likely people in the same situations. You are here in a safe space, and it's always good to get these emotions off your mind. Don't bottle them up. Let people here know about your struggles, as we can possibly get more eyes and ears in the medical community to take us seriously. It may be years, but every post, every subscriber, every comment here will help others who may Google the same things we type. We can possibly help other people who are younger or currently on a similar path. Don't give up. It's okay to feel pain. These emotions come in waves. Just like happiness and fear does. Verified professional: I'm sorry your doctors let you down, you deserve better care. You're right, Using puberty blockers for gender reasons is a massive uncontrolled experiment. I'm getting ready to write up a case series of detransitioners. We need your stories in the medical literature. Everyday pediatricians think that trans is the new gay, and if they have a patient with gender issues, they need to refer over to the gender clinic. It's all too confusing and intimidating. The gender clinic is staffed with true believers who are convinced they are life-saving heroes, but in actuality are playing God and making their protocols up as they go along. It's a mess. Next post, titled, "What is with the rise of young teens being trans?" Detrans female now. I have nothing against trans people, and I respect everyone's identities, but something that's confused me is the number of teens aged 13 to 16 being trans and even starting medical transitioning. I was on Stan Twitter from around 2017 and I only use it now a little bit, but it seems as if in those years there has been a huge spike in FTM people who are around 13 to 16. There was a time that I even thought I was a man because of internet influence, which obviously ended up not being the case. I wonder if that is what is happening with all these young teens on the internet, especially FTM. I feel like if I ever were to say my thoughts on this anywhere other than here, I'd be attacked and called transphobic, so I'll put my thoughts here. From the comments, desisted male, it's just a new alt culture, but this time the medical industrial complex takes a cut. Detrans female, it's an age when young people are discovering identity. It's also the age when people are most likely to hate themselves and have identity confusion, so they experiment with new versions of themselves. Deciding to be trans solves the whole problem. You get to be whoever and whatever you choose, like a reset button. There's also the need for attention and belonging, which comes automatically with being trans. It definitely gets you clout on social media, too. How could a desperate, insecure teenager resist? Detrans female, it feels good to be special. Look at punks, look at emos, look at the TikTok trend. Teenagers are impressionable and love attention. Genuinely. Detrans male, this is an example of how spreading awareness of an issue can have negative consequences that develop alongside the positive. To address specifically the exponential rise in cases of FTM, societal-wide sex-based oppression towards women has existed cross-culturally for millennia, and as a result young girls often struggle with identity issues during puberty as they approach the intangible concept of womanhood that they have absorbed from an early age to encompass many aspects that do not fall in line with their inner sense of selves. In the past, girls who felt different would struggle through puberty only to find a more balanced sense of belonging during early adulthood when they reach a higher level of emotional understanding, as well as leave the social bubbles of the education system and become more experienced in the wider world. The rise in trans advocacy has provided a quick fix, a legitimate, reportedly, scientifically backed and more importantly culturally backed early escape route from an identity that simply doesn't fit with many teenagers, girls especially. In the past, only those children who felt so out of touch with their birth sex that it would be extremely overtly apparent from an early age were finding their way into gender identity issues via their own diligent research. Now, the movement is scooping up anyone who feels slightly uncomfortable with their body as it is ravaged by puberty, which last time I check is pretty much all teenagers. To put it more simply, the development of our culture is such that it has always caused a suffering of identity issues in teenage girls, and the advocacy of the trans movement has inadvertently created a pathway of not only explaining the suffering to oneself that makes sense, but also a way of shifting all responsibility of feelings and behavior away from oneself and onto a medically recognized condition. It eases a burden put in place by an unequal society. The cost of that easing isn't collected until years later, and well, here we all are. Desisted male, being trans is sold as a fix to people's problems and a way to rebel against society with a community that appeals to teens who want to be loved and accepted by others. Desisted male, it's almost not even that the modern left has created this really sad youth, globalization, isolation, identity politics, and relativization of all values. They really just want to belong to something. Desisted female, everyone around them, especially in fandoms and stuff, are trans. It's social contagion in my opinion. Being trans is an easy answer to the pains of life, of teenagerhood. Questioning own gender transition after reading Irreversible Damage, Teenage Girls and the Transgender Craze by Abigail Schreier. There are points I disagree with, but it's very clear that the explosion of FTM or FTNB girls attempting to go through transition has a lot to do with the underdiagnoses of girls on the autism spectrum. Not too long ago, weird boys and girls would never have gotten diagnosed. Now only weird boys are being diagnosed, but still at far too low a rate. After the invention of the smartphone and cheap high-speed internet, these girls and boys that would normally have pro-social behaviors, outside play, face-to-face interactions, broken bones and scraped knees etc. are now losing what social skills exposure they would normally have. So, they fit in even less than they would normally, and as a result they don't relate to other girls. The popularity of trans celebrities, Laverne Cox, Caitlyn Jenner, Elliot Page, and acceptance of LGBT people as a part of normal society are also a part of it. Finally, They are also joining online support groups that claim the reason for their depression and detachment from other girls is because they are trans and the only solution is to transition. These girls are attempting to order testosterone, double mastectomies, and hysterectomies with very little pushback and oversight from psychiatric medical professionals. There are no simple solutions to this issue, but some things that can help are, more checks before a teenager or young adult can order testosterone or irreversible medical procedures. Increasing of checks in children for autism and Asperger's spectrum disorders. Decreasing the screen time children get, encouragement of outdoor play and pro-social behavior. TL.DR. The problem is multifaceted, the exposure of trans celebrities, Laverne Cox, Caitlyn Jenner, Elliot Page, the acceptance of LGBT people as parts of society especially online, easy access to cheap internet/smartphones, and the depression and detachment of millennials and Gen Z. The solution is not simple, more checks before someone can permanently transition, more diagnosis of boys/girls on autism spectrum, more time in the real world, and more socialization. Desisted female to that I would add, IMO is clearly also a social contagion like self-harm and ed. Teenage girls have a lot of pain. Anything they encounter that might give voice to that pain or provide some kind of solution is sure to spread like wildfire. Desisted male instead of learning to live with the uncomfortable changes of puberty and love and accept one's body, there are enablers and group psychology pushing transgender as a coping mechanism. But it has a host of other problems people aren't able to talk about without the conversation getting shut down. I believe there's also some evidence to suggest that the unequal rise in trans-identifying females has to do with misogyny, too. Detrans male almost everybody feels self-conscious with themselves at that age, and they are very impressionable. Stan Twitter is super LGBTQ and trans people have a strong presence on social media. TikTok also has a huge role. Back when I started hormones as a teen, YouTube was my drug of choice. You get so fascinated that you want to become them. Detrans female it is not normalized but glorified, and some teens love the attention. Next post, titled, Feel Ashamed. Socially trans, regrets medical transition. I feel ashamed of doing all this to my body, even SRS, if he started with testo now, he would be a castrated and chronic man for life. I can't get out of this. Next post, titled, Something I'm noticing here. Detrans male. I see a lot of young guys questioning here sometimes and could tell there's one common thing these people want. They want to become attractive. Mixed in with gender dysphoria/body dysmorphia, some others want to become attractive women. Some of these men are like partial acts, don't know if they get turned on from imagining themselves as a woman, but since they are straight, they see women as the epitome of beauty. Oh, to be attractive I have to have super pale skin, skinny, nice well-kept hair, feminine jawline, and if I don't have that then I'm ugly. It's like a weird form, no offense, of AGP that they appreciate women so much that they wish they were one. Whether you transition is up to you, but please try to heal your problems before. From the comments. Deleted user. To understand if you're truly transsexual, ask yourself, not you personally, you like general grammatic you, the following, would you want to be a woman in another society where gender roles are reversed and women are supposed to be broad-shouldered, flat-chested, don't use makeup and have a short haircut, be warriors at wars etc. In the world where it's males who are supposed to be beautiful? Turns out, most trans women wouldn't want to be women in this society. Transsexualism is about clinical dysphoria, and it always was about body, anatomy. Seems most people who now hijack trans communities are just cross-dressers and transvestites. Desisted female. The true transsexual doesn't exist because there is no set of conditions that can be observed across all persons who believe they're trans. It is a consequence of many social issues and health concerns, some which exist mentally. Desisted. Yup. That is pure AGP. I'm dating myself, but I remember telling my girlfriend in college that I'd transition if I could look like Christy Turlington but not to look like an ugly mannish woman. What would a woman do if she suddenly woke up in a man's body? Would she feel dysphoria? Absolutely. But would she watch sissy porn and masturbate into women's underwear? I doubt it. Questioning own gender transition. Yeah, that's not an unusual form, it's AGP quite literally. I stared at myself in the mirror for hours when I was a teenager, imagining how hot I would be as a woman. Then I cross-dressed and found out. Desisted. I think you hit a lot of very true points. Men deal with a lot of misandry from society, and there is an intense pressure to want to be attractive to women, a biological drive in most men, that leads to incredible distress when they feel like they don't link up. In addition, beauty standards in anime are very female-like. A man can put on drag and look indistinguishable from a woman because that's how anime looks like. I think a lot of men want to look like anime men, want point jaws, big eyes, small noses, no facial hair, etc. And then they see women looking like that, and just like you said, they think women are the attractive sex and want to be attractive too. Most of them can't put themselves in women's shoes, who feel the opposite, feel like men are the attractive ones. Most of us, again, not all, since some women are gay. But yeah, I remember thinking men were the attractive ones, and that I looked terrible when I wanted to be masculine. There was a cringe, a societally learned one, I'm sure. Detrans male, I agree, except that I don't think it's always AGP. Appreciation of beauty is not always sexual in nature. Desisted female and appreciation and appropriation are two different things as well. Desisted male, I agree that this seems to be motivating factor for lots of MTFs when you really get down to it. But also, you get into a weird gray area with it though. Because I don't think that desire can always be entirely explained by self-hatred. I've experienced this on some level for most of my life, but I definitely don't hate myself. My sense of self-love is probably as high as it has ever been right now, but I still occasionally feel like I'd love to look like a woman. I just love feminine fashion, and the feminine shape, I think makeup is cool, etc. And I admire women as people. Like, what do you say if someone just really admires and appreciates female aesthetics and fashion without it being motivated by negative emotions? What if that person just wants to aspire to them? Can you really say that's wrong? And can you really just reduce that to AGP? I think that's pretty lazy. I think it's important to be self-critical, understand your limitations, understand the risks of the different aspects of transmedicalism, understand what you might be losing in other spheres of your life, but I don't think it would be wrong for someone to decide that that's what they want to pursue. It isn't the conclusion that I've come to personally so far in my life, but I'm a risk-averse person. I can totally see why a perfectly sane person in a similar mindset to mine would decide that the downsides are worth it. Desisted female, yes, but you cannot appropriate womanhood. You can choose to wear all the chains women like me have been put in for thousands of years. The chains, I mean, of gendered clothing, you can put those on, you can wear makeup, etc., but that doesn't make a woman. Detrans male, agreed, and it's sad. I don't think most acts appropriate womanhood though. I do think some have a level of understanding that what they are doing is like a grotesque image of what a woman is. Makeup, long hair, nails, etc. Women don't need those to be a woman, they already are. All I'm saying is that some people here find women attractive to the level that they literally wish they were them, because they think they are the peak of beauty. Those men should just take pride in their masculinity, which most straight women find attractive. Next post, titled, I was just diagnosed with a disorder of sexual development. Detrans, I'm kind of in shock. I had a totally incidental finding of a DSD while being genetically screened for something else. It explains a lot of stuff about my life: androgynous appearance, unusual puberty, chronic medical issues, etc. The presentation of the disorder I have is somewhat unusual. In most people it causes atypical genitalia at birth, which I did not have. That's why it wasn't caught earlier. When I was younger, I tried to ask doctors about how I thought I might have some kind of hormonal disorder and was completely ignored because people with those kinds of issues are usually more obvious. So, like, a lot of my issues with gender, my body, and my mind could have been completely explained if someone tested me for this, or even suggested it, at some point, and many of my physical and psychological issues could probably have been treated with effing hydrocortisone and not weird disfiguring surgeries. Till. From the comments. Detrans female with a CCSD, I'm sorry this happened to you, unfortunately. Similar happened to me. I probably would have never transitioned had someone just been honest with me about my condition and proper treatment was started over it. Sadly, these days, they push intersex as an identity, so they would have pushed the treatment as being forced and denied it anyways cause of how intersex is seen. Still, I can relate as someone dealing with 46XX, XYSRY negative mosaicism. This video's last post, titled, Big Mood Lately, Detrans female. Me. My breasts. You didn't have to cut me off. End.